All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this Loran webinar for educators across Canada. My name is Heather Holland, and I am the Director of Alumni and External Relations at Loran. I joined the staff team at Loran just over 3 years ago and am an alum myself from the class of 1998. Prior to joining the staff team at Loran, I assessed applications as a volunteer on and off for over 20 years. It was an educator at my high school who encouraged me to apply 28 years ago. So I appreciate firsthand the positive influence that all of you have on your students with respect to this opportunity. Thanks so much for taking the time to be here today. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm joining today from Nogojawanong, Peterborough, Ontario. As we begin, I acknowledge and reflect on my privilege to live, work, and learn on the traditional territory of the Mississauga Anishinaabe. As we have attendees from all across Turtle Island today, I invite you to take a moment now to acknowledge and reflect on where you are calling in from today. My colleague Michelle is kindly monitoring the Q&A box to respond to any questions you may have. Thanks so much, Michelle. And my co-host Isha Mahmood is also here with us. Isha, I'd like to extend a warm welcome and say a great big thanks to you for joining us today to share a bit about your experience as a Loran Scholar. We're going to have a chance to hear much more from Isha throughout the presentation, but just briefly for the moment, can you introduce yourself to everyone, Isha?
Hi everyone, my name is Isha. I am from Cookstown, Ontario, and I went to school at Banting Memorial High School in Alliston, Ontario. I got the Loran Award in 2019 and then moved to Vancouver to attend the University of British Columbia, where I majored in international relations. And afterwards, I moved to London, England for my master's degree in international migration and public policy at the London School of Economics. And now I'm back in Vancouver living and working, and that's where I'm joining you from today.
Thanks so much, Isha. I really appreciate you being here.
I'm
The
happy to be
format
here.
for the webinar today, the microphones are disabled. You are very welcome to submit questions in the Q&A box at any time during the presentation. There will also be a question period at the end of the webinar, and information will be sent to you after the webinar, including a full recording. The Loran Award is much more than simply a financial scholarship for post-secondary studies. It is an opportunity to build critical skills and capacity for leadership, to expand horizons by taking on new challenges and exploring diverse experiences, and to join a community of purpose-driven peers who are committed to leaving the world better than they found it. In other words, this is a long-term investment focused on helping someone see their potential to make a difference, supported by and connected to a network of others who strive to lead with integrity. Students must be graduating from high school or CEGEP in 2026, and students who graduated in 2025 and are currently taking a gap year are also eligible to apply. They need to present a minimum cumulative average of 85% or an R score of 29 in Quebec, hold Canadian citizenship or permanent resident status, and be born between January 1st, 2004 and September 1st, 2010. The long and the short of it is the 85% is an eligibility criteria, but not a selection criteria. So generally they need to be academically strong, but not necessarily straight A's across the board. Once an applicant meets this mark, it doesn't matter if they have 86% or 98%. Loran's criteria are based on evidence of character, commitment to community service, and leadership potential. And regarding the permanent resident status, this has to do with the tuition waiver that is provided by our partner universities being offered only to domestic students. Loran believes that Canada needs unconventional leaders in every sector, so it looks for well-rounded young people who demonstrate strength of character, commitment to service in the community, and leadership potential. Over the past 35 years, the foundation has invested more than 70 million in more than 3,400 students. It's interesting to note that we are privately funded public charity, so we aren't funded by someone whose last name is Loran, but rather by hundreds and hundreds of donors from across the country who also believe in the work that we do and want to give high potential youth the opportunity to imagine, explore, and create the future. Today, there are 796 alumni and in-stream scholars giving back to their communities and pushing boundaries in diverse fields such as technology, the arts, finance, medicine, social services, law, government, science, entrepreneurship, and everything in between. So, Isha, I would like to invite you to expand on your introduction and share a bit about where you're from, how you found university, what you were like in high school, what drew you to the Loran Award, and a favorite Loran memory.
For sure. Thanks so much, Heather. As I shared, I'm from Cookstown, Ontario, and that is a small town just north of Toronto. It's actually classified as a village. The population is 1,000 people, and there's no high school in the town, so I went to high school in the neighboring town. And for me, I feel like I have a very unique story for how I got acquainted with the Loran Award. And it is that I was reading the University of Ottawa guidebook. I got to the scholarships page and I saw Loran and I went and quickly searched it up and I saw the applications were due the very next day. So I stayed up all night working on my application and the rest is history. I, I share that because I feel like there's often times where I'll hear from students every year who will be talking about how they prepared for the whole entire year leading up to the application date, or they'll be preparing their application for months. And though that's so great to fine tune your application and try and get it as amazing as it can be, I hope that all of you that are working with youth and educators know that it is possible to still win this award under different circumstances. And, even when the timing is tight, there's still the chance that you have students that could go through and win the whole award. So I really encourage you to, really encourage anyone who you feel is a great fit. For me, I would describe myself as being a connector in high school. I was someone that was able to connect with all different types of students, as well as staff and administrators. And I had big ideas and I loved to make them come to life. And this kind of went even beyond my own ideas. I was someone who loved to hear others' big plans or ideas that they had about how the school could improve or things that they wanted to see. And I loved helping them bring their own visions to life and connecting them with the right people. So that was something that, really characterized who I was then. I would say I was also such a self-starter. I was very motivated. At the time, I started the first mental health youth chapter at my school board, and I was organizing events, initiatives, a regional summit, all kind of from scratch. And those initiatives are still existing at my high school today. So, that's a great legacy for me to leave behind. But more generally, very creative problem solver and wanting to make things actually happen. Um, I then, won the Loran Award and moved to school out of province. And this is something that was so new to me. Moving to Vancouver, a big city from my small town, was so different and there was a lot of adjusting. But I started at UBC, which was an amazing experience for me. I was extremely involved on campus, where I worked for my student union, my faculty society, the Student Alumni Association, among several other kind of student connecting communities again. And I would say a lot of that was in part due to the Loran community and the different scholars who were older than me and who were at school there, as well as the alumni who encouraged me to pursue these types of opportunities. Um, and those things are, actually very relevant to my career today. And I think that Loran scholars are often people who are willing to think outside of the box and solve problems and be a connector in their communities overall. I would say that my favorite Loran memory looking back has to be my fourth year transition retreat week that we have for scholars who are going into their final year of university. Before our annual retreat, we get those graduating scholars together in Toronto to go over sessions to kind of prepare them for the post-grad life. And I found that to be so helpful. And it was an amazing time to just connect with my class of scholars as well. We were a particularly close group and continue to be. And so I just absolutely loved that to start my last year.
Thanks so much for sharing all of that. You should really appreciate it. All right, so our three pillars are character, service, and leadership. The biggest one, probably at this point in a young person's life, is character. We kind of think of it as the hardwiring already baked into these individuals, even at the age of 16, 17, or 18. Looking for the things we mentioned earlier, people who act with integrity, people who show compassion and kindness, people who are inner directed, they're not just chasing outer rewards. They're not solo players, they like to work in teams. We know there are some great solo players who will come up with some wonderful scientific discovery or whatnot. The Loran Award is actually geared for a different type of person, someone who is always engaged with others, thinking of others, and working with others. We mentioned before the intellectual curiosity in their interest to do different things and wanting to know more. We look for people who show courage and resilience and a commitment to service. And when we say service, sometimes people think that means formal volunteer work, but really it's commitment to others, helping to make things better for other people, whether that's in their family, their community, their faith group, their schools, the workplace, simply that dedication to others. We look for well-roundedness and authenticity and a willingness to take risks, those who genuinely care about their communities and want to make things better. They're the people who take action. They don't just complain about it, but they get to work on fixing it and they bring others along with them. While we strongly encourage all students to apply if they feel they are a good fit for the award, you know your students best. So please consider those who embody the characteristics that are on the screen and encourage them to apply. The selection of a Loran Scholar is unique in both its attention to a young person's character and the comprehensiveness of Loran's selection process. Loran believes in looking beyond a student's transcript to find evidence of integrity, grit, compassion, determination, and resilience, recognizing that these are better indicators of a young person's overall potential. We are looking for the long-term impact these Loran Scholars will have. Think not necessarily of the student council prime minister, captain of the hockey team, first trumpet of the band, or the person who is at the top of the class now, but rather the student who will come back to their high school reunion in 30 years and will have made a profound impact within their community. As you know, these are not necessarily the same people. So I invite you to ask yourselves who in your classroom has the potential to grow into the kind of person that this award celebrates. Program elements, when taken together, make the Loran Award the only one of its kind in Canada. I'll speak briefly to these elements now and then cover each in more depth as we move through the presentation. The Loran Award includes an annual stipend of $12,000 plus a top-up for first-year residents if needed, a tuition waiver of up to $12,000 annually, one-to-one mentorship with a local leader, a summer experiential learning program in 3 different sectors, and membership in a values-driven, diverse community, including orientation experiences, annual retreat, events, a national network, and a lifelong community. I'll just add that the financial component of the award exists mostly so that we can provide scholars with the resources required to enable them to meaningfully contribute to their communities and fully participate in the program. And to clarify, the top up to the annual stipend of $12,000 is additional funds available in the first year for individuals where first year university residence costs for a basic room and meal plan exceed the $12,000 annual stipend. This award is renewable for up to 4 years or 8 academic terms. The Loran Award is tenable at any of our 25 partner universities. Loran scholars are strongly encouraged to go to university in a new part of the country. This provides a chance for scholars to exercise independence, spread their wings, discover new communities, serve new groups of people, and gain respect for different regions of Canada. Ultimately, this is the scholar's decision as to where they will attend. Scholars are welcome to study in French or English. And did you know that there are French options outside of Quebec? So on this list, we have the University of Alberta's Campus Saint-Jean in Edmonton, Glendon Campus at York University in Toronto, and the University of Ottawa. Students still need to apply and be accepted, but they needn't have applied to university before they submit their Loran application. They can simply tell us on their application what they're thinking about for their university picks, but none of that needs to be set in stone just yet. Each scholar is matched with a leader in their university city for a multi-year mentoring relationship. Loran mentors are people who embody the values of Loran and encourage our scholars to do the same. They are business people, community leaders, and experts in their fields, and they commit to sharing their experiences and networks with scholars throughout the course of their undergraduate studies. Potential Loran mentors are identified and recruited by Loran. We go through a matching process for each student, which includes a questionnaire and conversations between scholar, mentor, and staff to confirm a suitable match together. We recognize that mentorship can come in many forms and encourage all scholars to engage in conversations with others who can provide insight or advice on topics around their academic and career interests. We also facilitate connections beyond mentorship, including alumni summer coaching, fourth year transition conversations, and conversations with upper year scholars in a program or university of interest. Isha, can I invite you to share more about your experience with your Loran mentor and how mentorship impacted you during the course of the program?
For sure. So I had a mentor who I had an amazing connection with. Her name was Nurjahan Mawani, and she was a lawyer, and she actually made a big impact in the immigration and refugee world of law in Canada, where she actually started the Immigration and Refugee Board and was a part of the Order of Canada. And she was just an amazing individual. While I was in university, I really was interested going through the law school pathways afterwards. And Nurjahan was always there to answer my questions, connect me to people in her personal network who she felt like were a good fit for me to speak with, as well as introducing me to different opportunities. She definitely was someone that I felt like I could always lean on, but she was also always looking for things to bring me to or people to introduce me to, as well as, like I said, opportunities to connect me with. And I feel like a great example of this is she was a part of something here in Vancouver called the University Women's Club. And she invited me to come in as a guest speaker, where I got to talk to their multicultural circle at this women's club and share more about my experience in university, being from a small town, moving to a new community. I was particularly interested in immigration, so that's kind of what we centered our conversations on. And I actually went on to complete my master's degree in that area. So I felt like she was, such a solid pillar for me to have throughout university. And the fact that she was so well connected in this new community that I moved to go to school in, she really helped make it feel more like home while advancing so many of my professional goals with me.
Thanks so much. That's great. For Loran scholars, summer academic breaks represent opportunities for some of the most transformational learning experiences of their university careers. Assisted by our extensive network and up to $14,000 in funding, students enrich their studies by building practical skills and experience in the professional world to which they will one day contribute. Whether spent in Canada or abroad, Loran summers are typically 12 weeks long and are designed to provide scholars with greater breadth and understanding of the interactions and intersections between the private, public, and not-for-profit sectors, and the role that each plays within the local, national, and global community. During public policy summers, scholars witness and participate in the process of policy creation. For enterprise summers, they contribute to the mission and goals of a for-profit environment. And rounding out the trifecta, scholars gain programming and service experience in community development summers as part of a not-for-profit or non-governmental organization. Isha, can you chime in to share a bit about your summers and the value that you found in them?
For sure, I had an amazing experience during all of my summer internships. The first two that I completed were places that Loran scholars had worked at beforehand. So I had spoken to scholars who had completed their summers there, and before I made my decision to commit to those organizations, I was able to learn a little bit more about the organization as well as what their actual work was like, the team that they worked with, the projects that they contributed to so that I knew it was a good fit. The first one that I worked at was called the Nobel Women's Initiative, and this is a nonprofit based out of Ottawa that was founded by six female Nobel Peace Prize laureates who work together to uplift different activists and grassroots organizations that are connected to uh, issues to do with uplifting and empowering women. And so my big project that I worked on over the summer that I was there was helping them produce a podcast series. And this was, an amazing experience for me to have right out of my first year of university. I got to work on not only, conceptualizing each episode and coming up with the different ideas and interview questions, but also I worked on the process with them all the way till the end of marketing that episode and getting it out there. So I really enjoyed that experience. I learned so much and I got to be connected with so many different community leaders through that role. My second summer, I worked for the Calgary Chamber of Voluntary Organizations, which is essentially a chamber of commerce for Calgary's nonprofit sector. And this was a role where I learned so many different technical skills when it came to policy and research, which were two areas that I was really interested in. And I actually was able to publish a report about red tape reduction initiatives in Alberta specifically. And this again was a great role where I learned so much about a province and a city that I previously didn't know very much about. And I got to meet so many of the nonprofit leaders in that world. And at the end of it, I came out with something tangible and substantial for me to say that I worked on. And then my third summer, which I really enjoyed because it shows just how flexible and the Loran program is and how much it complements whatever your interests are and what you're working on. And my third summer actually came out of an extracurricular that I was doing at university. I was working for my student union in the Office of External Affairs during my third year, and I was lobbying the provincial and federal governments on behalf of the post-secondary sector here in BC. And so my third summer, I got to work with the Canadian Alliance of Student Associations, which is essentially the organization that represents all the different student unions across Canada and conducts lobbying altogether to just the federal government. And so this was an experience that was building off of things I was already working on during my time at UBC, and I was able to only focus on a national lens. And we had some great advocacy wins that came out of that summer. I actually still am in contact with my manager in that role. She's now gone on to actually work for the federal government, and we always stay in touch whenever she's in Vancouver or I'm in Ottawa. And again, I actually had a published article that came out of my role there that was published by the Ontario Undergraduate Alliance. And I look back at my summers and I always just think that they were the building blocks that got me to where I am in my career now. And all of the people that I worked with, I still keep in touch with, grab a coffee with, and have a really positive rapport with. And I think what's really great about the summer program is that you have the alumni or older scholars to lean on and talk about their experiences with, as well as what they chose to do and how they carried it out that can kind of guide your own journey. And I think that Loran has so many partner organizations who choose to take on a scholar each year. And when they're committed to doing that, they make sure that you have something tangible or a project that students can walk away with and say that, hey, this is what I did during this summer. And here I can show you something, real. So it was a overall great experience.
Thanks so much, Isha. The Loran community is a very rich one, comprising scholars, alumni, staff, volunteers, and donors. We aim to support each other and hold a high bar for each other. We have many gatherings and events, both virtual and in person, during a scholar's time in the program and beyond. And community is at the heart of Loran's work. So from day one, Loran scholars join a supportive community that shares a commitment to service and leadership and strive to inspire each other to reach their potential and boldly tackle challenges. They often work together. Isha, can you share a little bit about the value of the Loran community as you've seen it and experienced it?
For sure. So I think that university is a time of a lot of change in a young person's life. And with the Loran Award, you're encouraged to go to school in a different part of the country. And like I mentioned, I'm from a small town, moved across the country for university, and I would say the value of the Loran community to me is the fact that it has always been an anchor in my life. So at my university at UBC, there were, I would say, around 20 upper year scholars that were there when I joined. And so it was so amazing to have them to lean on for support. They really helped me to integrate into my new community as well as introduce me to lots of different experiences and opportunities at my school and in the Vancouver area. But beyond that, as I just shared with Summers, they were the entire community is such a resource when it comes to finding your placements for your internships, and introducing you to different opportunities. And since then, since I've graduated, the Loran community still plays such a big role in my life. Just this past weekend, we had Loran Community Day at all of our different hubs across the world. So all the scholars and alumni in any major city kind of gathered together to, just catch up and get together once again, and we all really enjoy it. And this is something that I actually participated in even when I was studying in the UK. We celebrated Community Day even in London, England, which I think is so special. And in all of my jobs and things like that in my life since Loran, I'm consistently working with and connected to alumni. So it just feels like it is such a constant in my life. And I really appreciate how much we all uplift one another.
Thanks so much. That's great. All right. So, in addition to up to 36 Loran Awards, Loran will be granting up to 70 one-time provincial and territorial awards to candidates chosen by interview committees at the semi-final level, and those are valued at $3,000. We will also be awarding up to 54 one-time finalist awards to finalists not selected as Loran Scholars. These awards are tenable at any publicly funded Canadian university. There are many opportunities for young people to succeed in our selections process. We'll also share that we've heard year after year just how valuable the application process alone is for students. So often it's the first time they reflected on their activity record and questioned their curiosities and motivators, which can be a wonderful exercise to do before life after high school begins. As you know, applications are now open. Students can visit the website on the slide to begin their applications. October 16th before noon Eastern Standard Time is the deadline for all applications this year, and late applications or references will not be accepted. If a student has connectivity issues, they should contact us at info@loranscholar.ca or 416-646-2100 extension 100, and we can connect them with a paper application. Paper applications are also due before the deadline. Shortlisted candidates will be asked to submit a supplementary video so that we can learn more about the applicant before semifinals. Then, if selected as a semifinalist, candidates will participate in online interviews via video conference and will be given at least a week's notice before their day of interviews. We will work with students who need support in getting internet connectivity. If we are unsuccessful, they will be interviewed by phone. Semi-finalists who distinguish themselves in interviews will be invited to participate in national selections in Toronto in late February. All candidates will be contacted sometime during the week of December 15th with the results. Costs to attend nationals are covered by Loran. One of the most frequently asked questions that we hear is, what do I need to do in my interviews to become a Loran Scholar? Loran's interview process is so comprehensive and individualized that there is no one way to become a Loran Scholar. We're really not cookie cutter in our process, so our best advice continues to be for students to just be themselves. Our selections process recognizes that our candidates come from a diversity of backgrounds, each with different opportunities and challenges. We recruit selection volunteers from a variety of sectors, experiences, and careers who are demonstrating in their own lives the very values we look for in our scholars. By the time a Loran Scholar is selected, they have been interviewed or assessed by up to 13 different people. Please encourage your students to learn more about the Loran Award by reading up on our website and/or attending a webinar like this one. They can begin the application at apply.loranscholar.ca. The application is made up of a series of short questions to gather the context of the applicant and their experience, followed by 4 essays, with the longest being a max of 350 words. Please encourage your students to start early. They can save their application in pieces and work on it over multiple sessions. While working on their applications, students should determine who will provide a reference. Their referee may be a teacher, another faculty member at your school, or whomever else they feel can speak to their activities and qualifications for the award. This person may not be a friend or a family member. They should clearly communicate the request and deadline to the referee. Referees will be asked to complete a few questions about the applicant, plus write a reference letter, no longer than 250 words. And an applicant can trigger the reference request within the application portal. The referee can complete their portion of the application before the applicant has completed their portion. The application is not fully submitted until the reference portion is complete, and both portions are due before the deadline. Completed applications cannot be changed. We cannot accept letters from referees to attach to an application. It must be done online via the emailed instructions. Referees should check their spam folder if they don't see an email requesting that they log in after 2 hours following when the reference section was submitted by the applicant. Applicants should stay in close contact with their referee to ensure they submit the recommendation form on time. The application and reference form must both be completed before the deadline, or their application will not be considered. Students cannot skip steps. The entire process must be completed online, or if they cannot complete an online application for connectivity or other accessibility reasons, then accommodations will be made. Isha, can you share a bit more about your own experience with applying? I'm curious to hear how you went about it and who you chose as a reference and why.
Yeah, so the process was a little bit different back then in 2019, but overall, still a lot of the same elements of writing the different essays. And I think for me, I spent a lot of time thinking about how I wanted to tell the story of what it was that had meaning to me and what I was passionate about. So I decided to kind of write about all the different projects that I was working on in high school through a voice of why they were important to me and how I wanted to kind of use this as a building block in my future, and what my future aspirations were. So I think it's really important for students to put forward kind of a clear message, that's cohesive on who they are and be very clear in that. For my referee, I chose to use a teacher who I felt like knew me both personally, but also knew all of the different projects that I was working on outside of my classes. So somebody who could speak to my extracurriculars and the things that I was doing, like I said, outside of school as well. So the person that I chose was my French teacher as well as my guidance counselor. So she kind of played those two roles in my life, and I felt like she knew me very fully then as a person. And overall, that's the advice that I can continue to give to applicants today, that make sure you have someone that can speak to all of you, not just you as a student or you on your transcript, and try and tell a story about who you are.
Thanks so much. That's great. I know you mentioned that it was a pretty quick turnaround for you from hearing about it to submitting. Did you
Mhm.
have any doubts yourself about whether or not you should apply, or was it really clear?
For sure. I mean, like I said, I found out what the award was and the deadline was the very next day. So at that point, I just thought I might as well put my name in the ring. I never know what could come from it. And of course, I'm so happy that I did. So I think that any student who seems like they have the potential to like fit for this award, they should for sure just try, because you have no idea what the outcome could be. And Loran is constantly looking for different types of students who are unique, and I would say there's no cookie cutter to what a Loran scholar is. And that's just so apparent even in my class of scholars and all the different people that I've gone on to meet. Everyone is so different and is driven by different passions and experiences. So just make sure that students don't count themselves out just from the application process itself.
Well, that's great. Um, Were there any particular highlights that you recall? I know it's looking back a little ways now for you, but any particular highlights related to completing your application or moving through the selections process that you might want to share?
Yeah, I think that, the interview process itself is something that students are often very nervous about because you have a weekend of interviews in Toronto with people from all over the country. And for me, that was an experience that I've never had before, where I was in a room with students from across Canada. Like I said, I'm from a small town, so very small kind of worldview that I was used to. But looking back on that experience now, as nervous as I was, it was so amazing to connect with so many like-minded young people. And the friendships that I made that weekend still continue today. I know that all of the different finalists and scholars, so many of us continue to be friends or even work together in our lives now. So I would, really encourage students to embrace the whole experience. Beyond the application and the interview, you have the ability to make connections and meet friends with others who are just like you and are so passionate and driven too.
Fantastic. Thanks so much. I'm going to invite my colleague Michelle to join us. Thanks, Michelle. And we can open up the floor for Q&A. Perhaps there's questions in the chat you'd like to speak to, or we can give a moment and see what comes in.
Sure, there is one that just came through the chat. I will read it out loud. Are you able to give any more insight into the writing style for the short essay questions? For example, should students focus on the biggest impact they have had, or should they highlight all involvement within the community? So the questions, all four of the essay questions are like aimed to answer we ask candidates to respond to questions that are all guided around our three pillars, so character, commitment to service, and leadership potential. So for example, and you can go to our website, we do have the application that you can take a look at there. It's a blank application for this cycle. But just to read off a couple of the questions, one of them is: describe your most significant contribution to your school or extended communities. Why did you do it? How did it affect others? So it kind of speaks to both of your points in there, their impact as well as their involvement within their community. Another question is: describe a time you challenged yourself by going outside of your comfort zone. What was the risk and what did you learn? So to answer your question, we actually aim to have our questions speak to both their impact as well as their involvement in the community.
Thanks so much.
Thanks. And for now, there are no other questions in the chat, but I'll run through a couple of questions that we often get to our email from
That'd be great.
educators. And we'll see if any other questions in the meantime do come through the chat. But one thing I wanted to highlight was around transcripts. So we do not accept report cards or screenshots of student portals. So we accept transcripts that are school or ministry issued. And so I know that sometimes at different schools, different processes that can take time. So something that I would highlight for you to get across to the students is if they have to order their transcripts, and there is a process that takes several days or weeks, to have them get that going early. They can start that now as they're completing their application. So just to make sure that that's something that's on their minds. Another question we get a lot of questions about is referees. So they should enter their referee information early. The way that it works on our application is once they enter their referee's email address and information onto the application portal, which they can do as soon as they log in, it will trigger an email sent to the referee with the reference form for them to complete. So that can happen right away. And we would always recommend that that's something that they do first. They give some thought into who they'd like to have as their referee and get their information in there and send it off. Another thing I wanted to highlight though is that sometimes with school servers and security, our emails don't always get through. So if the referee is using a school email, please make sure have the candidates, the students connect with their referees to make sure they received that email, because if they didn't, they can reach out to us and we'll work with them to make sure they get all the information that they need. But we definitely don't want students to complete their whole application and just wait for their referee to complete the form and then find out that they never got the email. So they should definitely be following up and being proactive on that. And something else that we do get asked a lot, I guess a third one, is that there's no limit to the number of candidates that can apply from each school. They can go to our website and apply. And the same goes for the referee or the school contact. You can be the referee or the school contact for as many candidates that apply, as long as you can speak to their whether or not they're a good match for the award. And we've had some questions come in the meantime. Can the person responsible for the Loran dossier be a reference?
As
Do
long
you
as
mean,
it's not a friend or a family member, then you can be the reference. Yeah, any part of the school community would be fine. It's just the personal connection that we would advise against.
and the next question, with respect to referees, are there specific questions they are asked, and or is there guidance on the information they're asked to provide? So yes, once you, as a referee, when you receive the form, there's several questions for you to fill out. And if you do have any questions about those questions, you can also reach out to us by email. We can help clarify anything.
It's not too onerous of a time commitment. We do try and keep it fairly concise for the references.
And that is it for the questions that are in the Q&A. But if you do have any follow-up questions, please email us. I will put the email in the chat so that everyone has it handy, but please don't hesitate to reach out.
Thank you all again for taking the time to join us today and for supporting your school communities in being engaged with applying for Loran. And thank you, Isha, so much for joining us to share your experience as a scholar. Really, really appreciate it. All the best. Have a great day, everyone.